Here we are. All right, welcome everyone.
We made it. Okay.
So good to be here tonight. I'm Dana Stringam, my wife Autumn. This is our regular Tuesday night call. We love doing this. Normally we focus on products and all of the different things that our products do and how they can help people.
Right now we're doing a series called The Price of Discovery. And because so many times we're having to tell this story over and over, we just want to get it all out there.
Exactly.
All of it. So we're going to tell you the story of the development and the discovery of EMPowerplus and how, and boy, is it a story. So in the last 2 episodes that you can go see on YouTube on the Autumn Stringham channel, I think Renova Worldwide also has been putting those up on their YouTube.
I think you say part 1, part 2. So this will be the 3rd part. And
yeah, this is the 3rd part. I think we're going to have another one after this, but basically we've already covered the part where I'm severely mentally ill. Dana is distraught. My mother passes away from suicide. My whole family is just an absolute disaster. And it's like the ultimate rock bottom. It was awful, wasn't it?
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
At that point.
And then you get into details later on that one. Then we move on to, in the second, we talk about going off of medications and kind of a shallow view of the discovery, because at the point when I started using EMPowerplus, we didn't really know what we were doing. I did not believe for a single second that it was going to do any kind of good for me at all. And actually was pretty angry that it was even suggested that it might be something good for me. So
well, and it really wasn't.
There goes the placebo effect. Like,
well, exactly. And it was more like your dad just said, here's this stuff, and would bring it to you and be like, swallow, and you'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like it was that's what it was. I mean, you knew it was a vitamin mineral type of thing, but it really was like a concoction at that point.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't, the thing that's interesting, going back in the story a little bit, when your dad came up with this idea, it was like, there wasn't anything on the market, in terms of vitamin mineral supplements. Of course, there's vitamin mineral supplements all over the place, but that came close to this idea that they were using in the animal feed industry for the pigs.
No,
right?
It was super unique.
And so they couldn't just go to the store and get, oh yeah, this supplement here covers all the needs. So they had to gather a few different things from a couple of different companies in order to kind of come as close as they could, at least anyway, to this recipe that was working in the animal feed industry.
That's right.
Really interesting, right?
So it didn't seem like a legitimate thing at all.
No.
But when I started getting better, other people in the community also noticed. And that when my brother was doing better, people got excited and realized, oh my goodness, there's something to this. So they started using it also. And we would just tell people, it was called the quad program back then.
I guess we got to that point, right? We didn't call it anything at first because it was kind of like
just
it started to spread, and it was like,
Tony Stephen's pig pills.
Yeah. Pig concoction.
Right?
Like some
whatever.
Liquid and some pills and some weird stuff, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I think there's probably 30 or 40 people that were doing really, really well.
Yeah.
And feeling a lot calmer, coping so much better with stress, all of the stuff that happened to me, coming away from medications, like really transitioning in their lives to a completely different space. And so when that happened, we started having people collect data.
Well, and that's when the idea for the protocol and then naming it the quad program, because but it would work. I mean, there was these 4 different things. Ultimately, it came down to these 4 things, a liquid thing and then a couple of, some vitamin mineral thing. I think there was some grapeseed extract, something or other that was in there. But all of those things, again, were super critical. But the problem was it wasn't really consistent. And in fact, I think for those first couple of years, we went through like a couple of different suppliers of
the liquid.
The liquid in particular. There was one that was delicious and one that was not so delicious.
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't very consistent.
At one point, they actually had a researcher kind of doing a preliminary study and just doing some data collection. And the liquid that we were using as a part of this quad program actually changed. The color was different. Everything was
Tasted different. It's kind of like, wow.
So it was from an organic mine.
Yeah.
So down in Utah, they have these incredible mines. And I mean, they come up with a pretty good product because they take plant material that's been buried for, I don't know, 1,000 years or whatever, and they extract the mineral from it. And it's actually absorbable, it's usable in the body. But the problem is it can't stay consistent because when you move the bucket from here to over here, you're getting a different combination. And so what happened is as their product changed, so did I. And so did all of my friends who are also super, super sensitive to having Pretty obvious symptoms,
So,
pretty
and
miserable
so I
when things
guess,
aren't going right with the formulation.
yeah, and I think that's one of the, sort of, that was actually kind of the first research really, because
Yeah.
we discovered very, very quickly what, we didn't know exactly what was changed in the product, but it was
Mm-mm.
clear that something had changed. And therefore people started having symptoms and weird stuff again. It was like,
Yes.
okay, wait a minute. We got to go
Make-
back to what was actually in that initial product that works,
Right.
that was working.
At one point, I went from taking one bottle of liquid to like 6 in a month to
Yeah.
try to get a comparable experience, and
And
it
then
was
one
not
company went
working.
out of business too, right?
Hmm.
We were having good results with one particular company, and suddenly they're out of business, and everybody's out of their product.
Well, their
again.
stuff tasted terrible. So no, so it was one of those things where we didn't have a lot of control about
What was happening? Really.
anything,
Yeah,
but the results of change, when something changed, we all knew it. The whole community knew it.
absolutely.
So what my dad did was take some of the product that was working. He always kept bottles out and he had it tested in a lab and compared it to the bottles that weren't working and started to compare the differences. And as the formulations changed over the next few years, and as they watched this population of participants, we called ourselves, because we weren't patients, we're just
Right.
participants. We saw how we were affected by each formulation. They were able to really dial it down and figure out what the ratios needed to be between minerals. So it didn't seem to
And
matter how much vitamins we were getting
no,
as
but
much
the
as it
mineral
mattered.
was really important.
Yeah, and the ratio of mineral to mineral really, really mattered.
And there was a lot of effort put into what exactly is necessary. These trace minerals in particular, these trace elements that are hard to get through foods or whatever else, but that your dad discovered are absolutely critical for certain functions in the brain in particular. I mean, that's what he
Yeah.
was focused on, right? Is the brain and the health and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Things like copper, for instance, or vanadium, like these tiny, tiny little amounts that you
Selenium,
need. You don't need
molybdenum.
much, but
Yeah.
you still need it. So those are the kind of things where it's like, okay, we got to boil this down. We got to make sure those things are in there and in the proper ratio and balance.
That's right.
That's hard to do.
Those
from
were
a product
strange
that's
times.
some big mind somewhere.
Yeah,
Right?
those were strange times. And then there was a point where somebody, an amazing community leader who I have a great deal of respect for, came forward and offered to fund having the quad program turned into an all-in-one.
That was super
So
exciting times. I
it
remember.
was super
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, part of the reason they went that way, I think, too, was because remember by this point, we'd already introduced some of the preliminary research that had
Mhm.
taken place to like Bonnie Kaplan, for instance. And she, initially, the story, didn't want anything to do with it, blah, blah, blah. But then she did. She tried it on one of her treatment resistant patients and had some really great results.
Yeah.
And so in order to do some research, she wasn't confident in, like we weren't confident in using this concoction of stuff, right? These 4 different things that could possibly change whatever, because it's like, how do you know it's really working? So she was also kind of pushing for, you guys need to get an all-in-one thing so
That's
we
right.
can study it, right? A placebo versus whatever.
And that was at that point where we had our first powder formulation where people were taking
Oh, my
many,
goodness.
many pills. I was taking 32 of these a
Gagging
day.
on 32 of those a day.
Yeah, that was hard.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Over the years, the technology's changed, and we'll get into that story later. But what I wanted to talk about was while all this exciting stuff was happening with researchers coming on board, people starting to get excited. There was a government slush fund of some kind that was granted. There was a grant given.
$554,000. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't a small amount. It was like, let's get some
The
studying
Alberta
done here.
government
Yeah.
wanted this study because there was enough
Evidence
talk
and-
going on,
yeah.
enough evidence, enough anecdotal evidence that they were like, maybe this works. And so they started actually funding some research.
And the news articles everywhere from that period of
Yeah,
time.
we started seeing a
In
lot
fact,
in the news.
one of the things I put up on the Facebook, if you guys saw that, was an article that you did. It was a few years after that. But right around that period in particular, there was a lot of media interest in what was going on because it was making a tremendous difference for people. Like it really was.
Yeah,
It was
and
kind
it
of a
was
big deal.
really kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
So I want to just take a step into the personal though. This is the part of the story that you don't really ever hear. And I think that it's really important. Dana and I spend a lot of time talking to people and we share this on a personal level, but I just kind of want to share it with the planet right now. So while a lot of good was happening and so many of my symptoms had changed and I was so much calmer and clearer headed, it didn't always feel good. And we started to see a pattern that was very similar among many, many, many women that were sort of guinea pigging and kind of along for the ride, testing these formulations and the different iterations as they came out. But one of the things that has become well understood now is that when people transition away from their medication and they are actually feeling better physically and they get that clarity of thought, they experience some major remorse,
Oh yeah,
like
big time.
super humiliation.
Embarrassment, yeah, that
Yeah.
shame for past behaviors, whatever it is, things that they did when they were so classic. I mean, I can't even count how many times that comes up.
Yeah.
It's a real issue, and it's kind of sad, but
So
it's part of it.
a couple of years in, I realized I was not alone and that there were a lot of women who were experiencing, because we did girl chat, a lot of women experiencing the same sort of thing where they had terrible feelings of self-doubt and loneliness, and just extremely triggered by embarrassing memories of things that happened during the course of their illness. And I know that there were men that also experienced this, but I wasn't talking to the men. I was talking to my girlfriends. And so, we started to petition my dad and his business partner and just say, we need to have a support program. There needs to be somewhere that people can call and have this confirmed to them that they're not just losing their mind or like going through another depression, but that it's normal to have real feelings
Yeah.
about real loss. And that's kind of where I started into this campaign for helping and advocating for individuals who have walked the same path as me, who have been severely sick and then come around and then found themselves feeling less than happy about it. You know?
Well, because the regrets and the shame and the
Oh my
embarrassment could just
goodness.
overwhelm all the good. We saw that time and time again. It's like, well, yeah, because in some cases, some of these people were missing like years of their life, and it felt like they, missed out on 10 years of their life, kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So, I mean, I get that. I understand how devastating that can be. But your whole program and whole idea was, okay, we've got to move forward.
Well, I
Right? What
felt like
else
I
can we
had
do?
left off somewhere when I was about 16
Yeah,
and then woke up 24 years old with a baby and a husband.
huge chunk of life.
And had
suddenly,
to
what
go like,
happened?
what even happened here? Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? And that was a really difficult thing. And I know I'm not alone in that. I've seen countless people go through this where they kind of have this awakening and then they have to renegotiate everything in their life. Every relationship needs to be renegotiated because whatever agreements you made, you didn't make it in your right mind. And so,
Well,
wow, did we ever have to rebuild our marriage, didn't we?
of course. And sometimes, some habits are developed, during times when you're not feeling good at all, right? And
Yeah.
some of those habits may not be good. And some of those things need to be unlearned, and those habits need to be done away with. Those kind of things too are tough, right? And they're things that need to be addressed, but it takes time to get through those
It
things.
does take time, and sometimes it takes decades.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm discovering things, triggers and things that make me feel kind of sick. And I'll get a feeling like I have the flu, like it feels like a weird panic sick. And I have to remind myself, not necessarily illness. Let's think about the conversation I just had, or,
Right.
whatever other triggers might be there. These are things that don't actually go away just because you get your chemistry straightened out. If you've had a traumatic time or you've lost years to illness, it's really, really important to just realize that that's real life, and real life doesn't end, and there's no pill for that. And so the best we can do is to get really strong and really capable and get our chemistry straightened out using this discovery, and then be able to move forward in doing the hard work to kind of unravel the damaging habits and things.
Well, and the thing is, some people might recognize that they have these damaging habits, and they have these regrets, and they have these holes in their life because they were ill, but maybe they don't have that nutritional foundation. They're not well enough physically to begin to make those changes.
That's
And,
right.
and so you're kind of stuck in this hole
Well, if
of
you're
not being able
sleeping
to
all the
progress.
time or you're in a panic and you can't even make the mac and cheese, how
That's
are
right.
you going to eat healthy, write in your journal, and figure things out on a spiritual level?
Can't
Like,
do it.
you just can't.
It's super tough. And again, that's another thing we've seen time and time again, right?
Yeah.
And so, especially when people are starting, early on, and they've been in trouble for many years and are having, like, try not to have too many things happening at once. Just, open your hand, put some pills in it, or in this case now with the lightning, rip the package, open your mouth and dump the stuff in it. Just start with that. Just do
Yeah.
that a couple
Be
times a day,
consistent
and
about
just be
one
consistent about
thing.
one thing. And then as your body and brain start to normalize a little bit, some of these other things you can address.
So this was just such a strange time in the whole development of the EMPowerplus story, because on one side I was digging deep on the inside, and we were going through this incredible journey of discovery and renegotiation, and then on the other side this entire battle was ramping up, where people finding out about the way that this was discovered started to mock it. So it became literally pig pills in Canada.
We kind of embraced that though a little bit. It was kind of funny.
We thought it was hilarious, but and
Pictures of pigs and
it made
pills
for
and
great
weird stuff.
press. It really did. But it was just an incredible time where everything seemed to be moving. There was a lot of opposition to the idea that mentally ill people were allowed to choose a treatment, choose something that worked for them.
Yep.
And ultimately we ended up in a pretty incredible battle. I don't think that's a story we're going to tell in this series, but I think, maybe
not.
Maybe next time.
We kind of addressed it once before, but I think it's worth addressing again, because you brought up a good point about, the treatment. And again, going back to what we talked about, I think the very first, episode we did of this whole thing, where your doctor, as he's, kind of explaining the medicines and he's about to release you from the hospital, is talking to me. And, and as though you didn't even exist. And as though your rights, you didn't have any rights at this point. It was just my job to feed you the pills and you just exist.
Yeah.
Right. And so when people start to get better and everything, that's not what life is. You have rights, you have choice, that kind of thing. And I think as that started to come out, that's when we started to have some problems.
Well, back in the 90s, I think just in general in North America, and I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, so our new friends from Australia could tell us, but the stigma was so thick about mental illness that and even if you weren't mentally ill, if you were called that once, that's it, it's on your record.
Yeah,
that's right. It was such a thick stigma that it was really, really hard to be able to stand up and feel like, no, you know what, I'm going to tell you how I feel now.
Yeah.
And that was very, very new.
Absolutely.
So the discovery of EMPowerplus, I think, has changed the opinions of and the perception of mental illness in many places. And I believe that ultimately it's going to change the whole mental health industry in understanding better what mental illness is, which part is actually chemistry, and then which part is actually real life and can be dealt with effectively when somebody's chemistry is straightened out.
Right.
It's been an incredible journey, hasn't it?
It really has. There's so much to share, and we've learned so much and been through so much over the years. But it's been so fun for us to be able to talk about this a little bit in such an open way. And I think that was one of the ththings. People always talk about your book, and they say how wonderful it is and everything else. And one of the things they always tell me is that it made them feel like they had. Or that they weren't the only ones that felt the way that they felt, right? That they had some hope, because your book and the way you write and the experiences you share are like thousands of others out there, even though they're sitting there thinking they're the only ones.
Yeah.
Right. So to be able to do these kind of things and let people know that, hey, there's hope out there, for you, for your loved one, whatever. We've seen so many different things over all these years. It's really an exciting thing to be involved in.
It has been. It's been really cool.
So I don't know what we're going to pick up next week.
Next week, we're going to talk about research. So I think we've kind of taken you through the 90s, the perfecting of the EMPowerplus formulation, the fact that it got into an all-in-one with really bad technology, so that it required a massive dose of pills. And then next time, I think we're going to talk about making that transition, the miracles that happened to bring other professionals forward who shared what they understood about absorption technology that ultimately launched us again and again and again into improving not the formulation, because the formulation hasn't changed.
That's right.
But improving technology,
actual absorption technology. And well, you all know it's a game changer with lightning now, and it's just only going to get better from this point.
So I've opened up a strange can of worms here, because I talked really personally about regrets and mourning loss. That's one of the things that I love to address in a group called Feel Better with Autumn Stringham. Just started it up. We've done this stuff personally for 20 years, but just have a private group. There's only a couple hundred people in it right now. I would just invite anybody who is struggling with that. If you're using EMPowerplus and you've kind of hit a wall and you're needing to have some kind of support network, that's a great place to get support, and lots of information about what the next steps are, how to continue feeling better, how to determine if something is actually chemistry or maybe it's real life and you just have to find the tools to deal with it.
Yep.
And we get to share tools, and I go live and answer questions all day long. So go on over to Feel Better with Autumn Stringham on Facebook, and you'll be able to find this recording on Autumn Stringham channel for YouTube. Or Renova Worldwide has been posting them as well. So
That's
we're
right.
grateful for that.
In the meantime, just keep taking your EMPowerplus. Keep taking lighting.
Steady on.
Right? You want that foundation no matter what. So
Yeah.
awesome. All right, you guys.
See you next
We will-
Tuesday.
That's right. We'll see you all next Tuesday. You're going to end that one up there. I'll end this one down here. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Same
Yep.
time, same place. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Bye now.
Bye-bye.